world where loyalty was everything and betrayal cost you your life, one family ruled the streets. The smoke-filled bars, the dim alleyways, the whispers of gunfire in the night. This was their kingdom. But every empire has its cracks, and every brotherhood hides secrets. This is the story of power, blood, and a name that still echoes in the shadows. Let me take you back to where it all began. It's the early 1900s in Sicily. Life here is beautiful, but harsh. Our protagonist, Enzo Favara, is trapped in the unforgiving world of indentured labor, working under brutal conditions in the mines. Every day is a fight for survival, but fate is about to change everything. The chapter opens with chaos. A gas leak triggers a mine collapse. Amid the darkness, dust, and shouting voices, Enzo sees his chance. It's now or never. He makes a desperate escape, sprinting through collapsing tunnels, the sound of rocks and screams behind him. He's not running toward freedom. He's just running away from death. Enzo's escape leads him to a quiet barn in the countryside, but his troubles aren't over. Here, he comes face to face with Il Merlo, a dangerous enforcer sent to drag him back. Or worse, the air is tense, weapons ready, and it seems Enzo's freedom is about to be cut short. But in the last moment, Don Teresi and his men intervene, saving Enzo and changing the course of his life. Don Teresi doesn't just save Enzo, he brings him to his vineyard. Here Enzo meets Cesare and Valentina, two key figures in the Teresi household. For the first time in a long while, Enzo feels safe, but also uncertain. He's stepped into a new world, one of respect and loyalty, but also secrets and unspoken rules. The chapter kicks off with our main character getting a taste of the criminal life. You'll be introduced to Luca, who takes you on your first escort mission. You're on horseback, following a wagon, and it's a great way to get a feel for the game's equestrian controls. This journey leads you to Pasquale, your new go-to guy for equipment and upgrades. He hooks you up with some gear, and more importantly, gives you your first taste of the game's currency, denari. You also get a quick tutorial on Trinacria artifacts, a collectible item you'll want to keep an eye out for throughout your journey. With your new skills, you and Luca head to the Palio, the famous horse race. The goal is simple: win the 2-lap race for the Teresi family. This isn't just about speed. You'll need to master your horse's spur ability to maintain your pace and outrun the competition. After a triumphant victory, you're enjoying the moment with Isabella when things take a turn for the worse. You're ambushed by Lombra and his Spadaro goons. This leads to the chapter's final challenge, a boss fight against Lombra. Lombra is a tough opponent. He's incredibly aggressive and uses powerful strikes that you can't parry. Your strategy here is to focus on dodging his strikes and only parrying his regular attacks to create an opening for a counterattack. It's a true test of the skills you just learned. The fight is intense, but before it reaches a final conclusion, Luca returns and scares off the Spadaros, saving you from certain defeat and bringing Chapter 2 to a close. You've survived your first real test, learned vital skills, and are one step deeper into the world of the Mafia. The chapter starts off with a nice little bonus for those who pay attention, an optional objective to meet Isabella in the garden, which gets you a sweet achievement. But the real work begins when you meet up with Luca and Cesare at the stables. Your first job is a collections run to a citrus farm. Here, you'll need to put on your intimidating face to get a stubborn farmer to cough up the location of a safe containing the goods you're after. This is a great intro to the game's intimidation mechanics and shows you how to get what you want without always resorting to violence. The final part of the chapter is where the action really heats up. You're at a farm dealing with some bandits, and for the first time, you're given a loaded gun. This is your introduction to the game's gun combat, and you'll need to strategically take out multiple bandits to survive. Just when you think it's over, you're hit with a massive ambush. You'll get your hands on a rifle and have to hold your ground against over a dozen bandit reinforcements. It's a true test of your shooting skills, and a chaotic finale to a tense chapter. With the bandits defeated and the bodies disposed of, the chapter comes to a close. The chapter begins with a seemingly simple task from Don Teresi: escort Isabella and Baron Fonanella's son, Gennaro, on a trip through the valley. You, as Enzo, ride on horseback with Isabella, while Cesare and Gennaro follow in a car. After dealing with a car breakdown, Isabella challenges you to an off-road horse race to the top of a mountain. This race is a good opportunity to use shortcuts and test your riding skills. At the top, you'll be introduced to photography, a new collectible in the game. After Isabella and Gennaro leave, you and Cesare get to have some fun. Cesare encourages you to take Gennaro's car for a spin on the nearby Circuit of the Gods, which acts as a driving tutorial, but the joyride is cut short when you discover that Isabella and Gennaro have been ambushed by bandits at a temple. You must engage in a major combat encounter to rescue them, using cover and looting enemies for supplies. You successfully fight through the bandits, but in a final twist, they manage to kidnap Isabella. The final section of the chapter has you infiltrating Messina's bandit camp alone to rescue Gennaro. You have the choice to approach this mission stealthily or aggressively. You'll need to navigate the camp, collecting various items like a charm, notes, and a newspaper. After you find and untie Gennaro, a cutscene triggers a knife duel boss fight with Messina. Upon defeating him, the chapter concludes with a warm welcome back at Villa Torrisi. The chapter begins with Don Torrisi giving you, Enzo, a mission to find the man responsible for the kidnapping in the previous chapter, Ludovici. You'll first get some gear from Valerio and a car from the garage before meeting up with Tino and his men, who are already staking out Ludovici's villa. The main part of the mission is infiltrating the villa. You can choose a stealthy approach to earn a secret trophy, using distractions and takedowns to get past the guards. You'll also find various collectibles, including newspapers, a trinacria, and a charm. Upon reaching Ludovici's study, an alarm is raised, and a shootout begins. You'll need to use a sniper rifle from a balcony to clear the garden of guards before chasing after Ludovici. After cornering Ludovici, you are tasked with executing him. Here, you have a crucial choice. You can either kill him, or, for the man of honor, refuse to do so. Following this intense decision, the game fast-forwards 1 week. The chapter concludes with you celebrating with Luca and others before being given a new apartment in San Celeste. This apartment allows you to customize your character. The chapter ends once you interact with the bedside table in your new home, setting you up for the next part of your journey. The chapter begins with you, Enzo, and Cesare meeting with Leo at a tannery. Your mission is to rescue a forger, Giuseppe, who has been arrested and is being held in a heavily guarded prison. Don Torrisi needs this man for a new counterfeiting operation in the United States, so failure is not an option. You then head to San Celeste and meet with an informant, easily identifiable by his red waistcoat. The informant gives you a tour of the Gardi station, helping you get a feel for the layout before you sneak in later that night. The main part of the mission is a tense infiltration. You'll need to use stealth tactics, like luring guards with coins or bottles and taking them down to hide their bodies. You successfully reach the holding cells, free Giuseppe, and retrieve a key, but Giuseppe refuses to leave without his valuable printing plates. This means you must go deeper into the station to find them. Inside the station, you'll need to collect various notes and items to solve a puzzle. You'll find combinations to safes, including those of Bracanti, Marino, and D'Amico. After you open D'Amico's safe and retrieve the printing plates, an alarm is triggered and a massive shootout begins. You must fight your way out of the station, regroup with Cesare, and defend against waves of guards so that Cesare and Giuseppe can escape. As they make their getaway, you stay behind for a one-on-one knife duel with Major D'Amico. The fight is a straightforward parry and strike sequence, and the chapter concludes with a cutscene. The chapter kicks off with the gang getting their hands on a shiny new car and a star driver, our protagonist, Enzo. To secure a spot in the big race, they need to get a competing racer, the Marquis, to drop out. This is accomplished with a bit of a sneaky mission. You'll need to infiltrate a brothel and take a compromising photograph of him, which will force him to withdraw from the race. After getting the photo, the game fast forwards to the next day. It's time to test out the new car. You'll be tasked with racing the car against a speeding train to see what it's capable of. This is a great warm-up for the main event, a race with 6 racers, including you. The key to winning is maintaining a steady speed and feathering the brake on tight turns to avoid crashing. You'll want to focus on overtaking the other racers on the corners to get ahead. Once you win the race, it's time to celebrate with the gang. After the festivities, Enzo finds Isabella on a pier. He brings her back to the group for a photo, and the chapter concludes with a final group photograph. The chapter begins with some unsettling news for our protagonist, Tino. The word is out. There's a rat in the organization. The police, or Guardi, are planning a raid on a tannery where a forgery operation is in full swing. This is a high-stakes mission from the start. Your first objective is to race to the tannery to warn everyone. Upon arrival, you'll head inside a chapel to find Cesare and the others. It's here that the shocking truth is revealed. The rat is none other than Lombra, a man you've tangled with before. Your mission shifts immediately to finding the forger, Giuseppe, and securing the printing press before the Guardia can shut down the entire operation. After fighting your way through numerous enemies, you finally find Giuseppe in a storehouse, but the chaos isn't over yet. You learn that Cesare is trapped and must be rescued. Once Cesare is safe, Lombra makes a break for it in a car, leading to a high-speed chase. The chapter's climax sees you cornering Lombra in the woods, where you finally find him. The chapter concludes with a lengthy, cinematic cutscene that sets the stage for what's to come. Being sent to the town of Colasolfo to investigate some trouble at Baron Fontanella's factory. Your first step is to gather information about a character named Lorenzetti. You'll do this by talking to various people at the vineyard who eventually point you to Colasolfo to continue your investigation. Once in town, you'll need to do some more digging. You'll speak to Lorenzetti's mistress to finally uncover the location of Lorenzetti's locked office. You find an alternate entrance through a balcony and enter the office, where you collect notes that reveal a proposed strike and the demands from the Spadaro gang. With this new information, you're tasked with infiltrating the factory. This is where things get tense. You have the option to take a stealthy approach to earn a special achievement, carefully navigating through the factory and taking down guards. You eventually make your way to the foreman's office. Following a cutscene, the factory is set on fire, and you're ambushed by Spadaro's men. You must fight your way out of the burning building, using everything you've learned so far. The chapter concludes with a final knife duel against an unnamed Spadaro henchman. The chapter begins with you, Enzo, and your crew heading to San Celeste for a joyous occasion, the baptism of Luca's child. Enzo and Isabella drive there together, and Enzo is tasked with finding a gift for her. He finds a flower from a vendor, gives it to her, and they head inside a church for the celebration. But the party is quickly shattered by the sound of a sniper. Someone is trying to assassinate the Don. You must make your way to the top of the church tower, taking cover and working with Cesare to push a statue. Unfortunately, Cesare gets shot, but you press on. You finally reach the sniper, who is revealed to be Il Merlo, a character from the very beginning of the game. A long and intense knife duel ensues. After a 2-part duel, a chaotic chase sequence begins. You're given a pistol to take out Il Merlo's goons as you chase his car on horseback. The final confrontation takes place in another knife duel with Il Merlo. The chapter concludes once you've defeated him, bringing an end to this tense and personal vendetta. The chapter begins with what's supposed to be a historic moment, a peace meeting between the major mafia families. Our protagonist, Enzo, and Don Teresi and his crew head to a Tanara to sit down with Spadaro. But this sit-down quickly turns into a deadly ambush. The moment the meeting begins, chaos erupts, and you and your crew are forced to fight for your lives. The chapter begins with what's supposed to be a historic moment, a peace meeting between the major mafia families. Our protagonist, Enzo, Zrenia Don Teresi, and his crew head to a Tanara to sit down with Spadaro, but this sit-down quickly turns into a deadly ambush. The moment the meeting begins, chaos erupts, and you and your crew are forced to fight for your lives. The chapter is a non-stop series of firefights. You'll have to defend Don Teresi first inside the Tanara, taking on attackers from the second floor. Then, you'll fight your way outside against wave after wave of relentless enemies. You'll need to reach a sniper nest to defend Leo before continuing your escape. The final part of this section is a relentless battle against a final group of Spadaros as you try to get away. The chapter concludes with a thrilling high-speed chase. You'll be in the back of a truck, tasked with defending it from a convoy of pursuing Spadaro cars. This is a true test of your shooting skills as you fight your way all the way to Porto Almaro. The enemies finally give up the chase, and the chapter ends with a final cutscene that sets the stage for the game's finale. The chapter begins with the Teresi family reeling from the events of the previous chapter. To reassert their power, you, as Enzo, are sent on a high-stakes mission to assassinate two key figures. You'll get dressed, meet with Cesare, and head to the Teresi villa to get your final orders from the Don. From there, you're taken to an opera house, where you must follow a priest to get inside undetected. Once inside, you'll need to navigate the sewers and backstage areas, taking down guards to reach your first target. You successfully assassinate Baron Fontanella, but the second target, Don Spadaro, manages to escape. This triggers a frantic chase through the burning opera house. You must fight your way through Spadaro's men, using everything you've learned so far to survive the chaotic inferno. After fighting your way through the burning opera house, you finally catch up to Don Spadaro for the final showdown, a one-on-one knife duel. This is the ultimate test of your skills and the culmination of your journey. After you defeat Spadaro, a lengthy cinematic cutscene plays, bringing the main story to a close. The chapter concludes with you visiting an old friend back at the Teresi vineyard, a quiet moment of reflection after the chaos. The chapter begins with you, Enzo, logically tasked with a grim duty, cleaning up the remaining Spadaro holdouts. Your first objective is to take care of a man named Ignacio. This involves a rather unsavory mission where you'll pick up a body with a Tino, component placement, drive it to a farm, and bury it. It's a clear signal that the Teresi family is serious about its dominance. Following this, you'll find Valentina. Your final target is Costa, who has taken refuge in a church. You must fight your way up a hill, dealing with Spadaro guards and even snipers to get to him. The chapter culminates with you cornering and killing Costa inside the church, bringing an end to the Spadaro threat. With Costa's death, the chapter concludes, and the Teresi family's control is secured. The final chapter begins with our protagonist, Enzo, and Isabella preparing to start a new life together in America. Enzo drives to a meeting point to pick her up, and they head to the train station. But their plans are suddenly put on hold when they are stopped by one of Don Teresi's men. At the station, Enzo and Isabella are separated, and Enzo is taken to see the Don. Enzo's loyalty is put to the ultimate test when he is forced into a knife duel with Cesare. After a heartbreaking victory, Enzo must fight his way through Don Teresi's men to get back to Isabella. The climax of his journey comes in a final personal knife duel with Don Teresi himself, the man who brought him into this life. But the story isn't over yet. The perspective then switches to Isabella. She must use all of her wit and stealth to make her way through the villa to meet Enzo. Her final challenge is a stealth-based encounter to defeat Tino, a man who has been with them from the very beginning. Once Tino is defeated, the game's campaign concludes, leaving Enzo and Isabella to finally begin their new life. But the story isn't over yet. The perspective then switches to Isabella. She must use all of her wit and stealth to make her way through the villa to meet Enzo. In the 1930s Lost Heaven, a young cab driver named Tommy Angelo makes one choice that changes everything. One night, two mobsters crash into his life.
Get up, pal! There's a taxi!
And from that moment on, he's pulled into the world of crime, loyalty, and betrayal. But loyalty has a cost. Now, with his life on the line and secrets that could bring down a mob boss, Tommy must decide. Will he risk everything to survive, or will the life he chose be his undoing? Stay tuned to dive into a story where every decision could be his last. Mafia opens in 1938 as gangster Tommy Angelo arrives at a little diner to meet with an Irish cop named Detective Norman. Tommy's come to Norman to ask for police protection for himself and his family, but Norman, abrasive and impatient, scoffs at the idea. Tommy insists that he doesn't expect something for nothing, and that what he knows can help bring down a notorious mob boss named Salieri. Norman, still skeptical, demands to hear the whole story before he'll promise anything, so Tommy obliges. 1930. As Tommy's story begins, he's nothing more than a young cab driver, trying to make a living during the Great Depression in the New York-Chicago-inspired city of Lost Heaven. His luck changes late one night when a couple of mobsters named Sam and Paulie accidentally cross his path. Wounded and fleeing a bunch of rival gangsters from the Morello family, the two crash their car, hold Tommy at gunpoint, and order him to drive them to safety. Following a tense, gunfire-filled car chase, Tommy takes his kidnappers to Little Italy, where he learns that they work for the Salieri crime family. Tommy's then rewarded for his service and offered more work, which he says he'll think about. Really though, Tommy has no intention of ever accepting. "Better to be poor and alive than rich and dead, right?" he asks Norman in his narration. The next day, it seems like Tommy's going to follow through on his vow of poverty, but fate has other ideas. After taking a few fares to their destinations, he stops for a coffee break in Little Italy, only to be immediately assaulted by a couple of the Morello mobsters from the previous night, who remembered his cab. Fleeing on foot, Tommy decides to call in the favor he's owed by the Salieris, and leads the thugs on a chase to Salieri's bar, where they're gunned down and disposed of. Following the incident, Tommy accepts the protection offered by Don Salieri and is hired on as a driver. To test his mettle and give him a chance to get back at Morello's thugs, Salieri sends him, along with Paulie, the Joe Pesci-looking goon from the other night, to wreck a few cars outside of Morello's bar. The vandalism goes well enough that Tommy is then entrusted with driving Paulie and Sam around as they extort protection money from businesses around Lost Heaven. Sam and Paulie walk into the hotel while Tommy waits with the car, and no sooner has Tommy lit a cigarette than a couple of gunshots go off, and Paulie stumbles out, wounded again. The Morellos have decided to muscle in on the motel, and they order Paulie and Tommy to beat it. Sam, meanwhile, has been taken hostage so they can squeeze him for information. Obviously, Tommy can't let that situation stand, and so he continues what will be a long cycle of saving Paulie and Sam's asses after they've been kidnapped and or wounded. Putting on his best badass face, he draws a pistol, finds a rear entrance, and proceeds to perforate every living thing inside the motel. After turning the place into shooting gallery, Tommy rescues Sam and is confronted by one last Morello mobster, who escapes with the protection money. Giving chase, Tommy gets a nice tour of the bucolic backroads around Lost Heaven as he chases the bastard down and kills him. 1932. After a couple of presumably uneventful years driving for Salieri, Tommy is approached with a special request from the old man. Salieri's got some serious cash riding on an auto race, but one of the new entrants worries him. Some European hotshot has entered the race with what might be the fastest car in the world, and Salieri can't allow an unfair advantage, especially when it's an advantage against him. Salieri therefore asks Tommy to sneak onto the speedway, steal the car, and take it to a mechanic named Lucas Bertone for some modifications. Bertone, by the way, is instrumental for the rest of the game in giving Tommy side missions and helping him steal better and faster cars. The operation goes off without a hitch, but the next morning, Salieri's favorite driver shows up with a broken arm. It turns out the entire neighborhood was backing Salieri's driver as well, so in order to save face, Tommy is ordered to enter the race, which of course, he wins. Following his success on the track, Tommy meets Sarah, the daughter of Salieri's bartender, Luigi. Some nights later, Luigi asks Tommy to walk Sarah home. It seems some local thugs have been menacing her, and she's worried for her safety. Sure enough, her worries are well-founded, and the punks show up to harass Sarah and Tommy on the walk home. And when they get violent and try to assault Sarah, Tommy goes ballistic and kicks all their asses at once. Naturally, Sarah gets really turned on by all this, and after she dresses Tommy's wounds, we're treated to a vague, bare shoulders love scene that predates Mass Effect's hot alien action by a full 5 years. What happens next is one of the most pivotal events in the game. Salieri isn't happy with these punks trying to make trouble on his turf, and so he orders Tommy and Paulie to send them a message, one delivered to kneecaps by baseball bats. Unfortunately, the plan hits a snag when some of the gang members turn out to be packing heat, and Tommy and Paulie have no choice but to return fire. Even more unluckily, the last hood they kill turns out to be the son of a city councilman, and the only surviving punk witnesses the murder. This is what we call foreshadowing. Soon, Tommy's assignments begin to take on a darker bent. Salieri's consigliere, Frank, approaches Tommy with orders to murder the owner of a high-class brothel, who has recently decided to switch his allegiance to Morello. To make sure that the message is clear to anyone considering a similar change, Tommy is to then blow up the manager's office and escape. And while he's at it, he'll need to murder a prostitute who's been passing information about Salieri's activities to Morello. After entering the hotel, gunning down the owner, and making short work of the guards, Tommy finds the girl's room and confronts her in her bathtub, only to find out that she's Sarah's best friend, Michelle. Already uneasy with the idea of killing a woman, Tommy decides to let her live on the condition she leave town and never show her face again. Quick note to all soft-hearted would-be assassins: as innumerable gangster movies have taught us, this will always come back to bite you in the ass. Tommy's conscience doesn't keep him from bombing the dead manager's office, of course. And as the hotel's top floor erupts in a huge fireball, Tommy escapes by leaping through a plate glass window. It isn't long before the cops show up, and an extended shootout across the nearby rooftops ensues. Finally, Tommy manages to make his getaway through the open, under-construction steeple of a nearby church. Of course, these things never go smoothly, and the church just so happens to be playing host to the funeral of the punk Tommy and Paulie killed the other night. The surviving kid fingers Tommy as the murderer, leading some of the mourners to open fire, as you do. After turning the church into a slaughterhouse, Tommy is confronted by a priest who asks him why he's committed so terrible a sin. Shrugging off the criticism, Tommy hands the priest a wad of cash to pay for the damages and leaves. 1933. Sometime later, Tommy, Paulie, and a couple of nameless Salieri thugs truck out to a countryside farmhouse to pick up a shipment of Canadian liquor. Sam's supposed to be there waiting for them, but when Tommy and Paulie show up, things are strangely quiet. Tommy investigates and finds one of Salieri's drivers dead in a truck. More than that, the whole crew's apparently been killed. The farm then erupts with Morello goons and corrupt cops who've made a secret pact to bring down Salieri. They're also holding Sam, badly wounded and kidnapped again, in the loft of a barn. Tommy and Paulie eventually shoot their way through the soldiers and escape, with Tommy machine gunning their pursuers from the back of a truck. Once the three make it back to the relative safety of the city, Sam is dropped at Salieri's private doctor's house to recover, and Tommy limps back to Salieri's to deliver the news to the old man. Of course, things are just beginning to go bad. It turns out that while Tommy and his buddies were shooting their way through the farm, Frank quietly turned informant and handed Salieri's books over to the cops. The penalty is execution, and no flimsy police protection is going to hold back mob justice. The task of hunting Frank down falls to Tommy, who's also ordered to retrieve the evidence Frank handed over. What's more, he's told to murder Frank with a sawed-off shotgun, apparently known in Sicily as a lupara, a signature weapon for executions. After roughing up a couple of stoolies, Tommy figures out where Frank is hiding and follows him to the airport, where, after shooting his way through what feels like dozens of heavily armed G-men, he discovers that Frank's only reason for turning traitor was because Morello was holding his wife and child hostage. If Frank cooperated with prosecutors, however, he and his family would be flown to safety in Europe. Once again, Tommy can't bring himself to commit cold-blooded murder, especially not after hearing a story like that. After Frank leads him to Salieri's books are safe, Tommy orders Frank to get on the plane to Europe and never breathe a word of his existence to anyone. Convinced that Tommy killed Frank and disposed of the body, Salieri holds a full funeral in the man's honor. The heat's not off yet, though. Salieri has to completely disrupt the prosecution's case. While Sam and Paulie are sent out to take care of witnesses, Tommy is tapped to sneak into the prosecutor's mansion, which is crawling with armed guards, and crack a safe to steal back the last shreds of evidence the state has against Salieri. Succeeding with the help of safecracker Salvatore, Tommy hightails it back to safety and celebrates with the rest of the gang. Sometime after that, Tommy marries Sarah and the two have a daughter. Prohibition ends, and Salieri's family uses the money it made running booze to fund legitimate business deals, while still running illegal rackets behind the scenes, of course. 1935. A couple of years later, Tommy and Salieri head out for lunch after Salieri's bodyguard calls in sick. During the meal, a group of Morello thugs drive up and start shooting up the restaurant before tossing in a grenade, killing just about everyone except Salieri and Tommy, who've taken cover behind an overturned table. Unharmed, Salieri distracts the goons while Tommy sneaks around, outflanks them and guns them down. Furious at the attempt on his life, Salieri realized that his bodyguard sold him out, and he and Tommy immediately pay a visit to the man's apartment. Catching him in his underwear and storming past his sobbing wife, the mobsters chase the man into a courtyard where they blow his brains out in front of his neighbors. Being civic-minded people, some of those neighbors respond to the screams of murder by attacking, forcing Tommy to kill them as well. Meanwhile, Morello is surprised to learn that the assassination attempt failed. After consulting with his brother Sergio, he prepares for all-out war against Salieri. Salieri and Tommy aren't resting either, and decide it's time to take the fight to Morello. First, though, they need to weaken him and draw him out, which they decide to do by taking out his strongest allies. First on the list is a certain pain-in-the-ass city councilman. You know, the one with the dead son. To kill him, Tommy has to infiltrate the man's birthday party, held on a steamboat anchored near the city's central island. Disguising himself as a crew member, Tommy sneaks aboard and finds a gun hidden in a restroom, which, in a twist that keeps it from being just another Godfather reference, has been fouled by a mess. He finds it in time for the councilman's speech, though, and as he finishes addressing his guests, Tommy walks up and executes him in front of the crowd. Chaos ensues, and Tommy escapes on a speedboat piloted by Paulie. The mob then turns its attention to Morello's brother Sergio, but a car bomb attempt ends with Sergio's mistress dead instead of him. A second attempt on Sergio's life is botched by a jammed gun, and a third ends with Salieri's hired hitmen turned to paste on a railroad track. After witnessing all three failures, Tommy takes it upon himself to chase Sergio down, ultimately killing the lucky bastard in a dramatic waterfront shootout. Finally, it's time to cap Morello himself. Tommy, Paulie, and Sam are sent to assassinate him while he takes in a show at the theater, but by the time the three arrive, Morello's already leaving. This is one of the few points in the game where things can develop differently, and the encounter either ends with Morello boarding a plane, which is then shot down by Tommy, or driving his car off a cliff, at which point it explodes. Either way, the man is doomed to a fiery death. Following Morello's death, the action cuts back to the continuing chat between Tommy and Norman. As the two talk, Tommy reveals something interesting. In 1920, Salieri and Morello were friends, working together as captains for a crime boss named Paponi. Ambition got the better of them, though, and their actions got the old man killed. After that, it didn't take too long for Morello and Salieri to eventually turn on one another. When he learned this, Tommy says he realized that would be his likely fate as well, killed by his friends because someone got too greedy. 1938. With Lost Heaven's criminal operations under his near-complete control, Salieri hasn't become any less ambitious. A tough-on-crime politician who's secretly running brothels without kicking up anything to the Salieris has begun to irritate him, and so he orders Tommy to take care of the problem. Tommy's equipped with a scoped Mosin Nagant rifle for the job, and, after climbing to the top of a tower in an abandoned prison, Tommy draws a bead on the politician during a speech and dramatically murders him in front of a gathered crowd. Salieri learns about a shipping manifest from a local importer and suddenly develops a craving for some expensive cigars that are being shipped in. Ignoring their protestations that it's a small potatoes heist, Salieri orders Tommy, Sam, and Paulie to steal a truckload of the things. While the three drive to the shipping yards to steal the truck, Paulie floats the idea of knocking over a medium-sized, poorly guarded bank he knows about. But because an independent robbery is something the Don would likely kill them for, Sam and Tommy immediately refuse. But after the surprisingly dangerous caper nearly gets them killed, Paulie and Tommy investigate a smashed crate and find out that the cigars are actually smuggled diamonds. After Salieri fails to tell them about the real nature of the haul, or about the money he's going to get from selling them, Tommy decides to help Paulie out with the robbery. The way Paulie lays it out, the robbery is going to be one last big score that will enable Paulie and Tommy to take it easy. Paulie turns out to be exactly right. For once, the daring robbery goes off without a hitch, and the two make off with a huge fortune, stashing the money at Paulie's apartment and agreeing not to spend any of it for the time being, so as to keep anyone else from finding out. The next day, Tommy stops by Paulie's apartment and finds the door unlocked. Stepping inside, Tommy finds Paulie lying dead on the floor, his back riddled with gunshot wounds. The money's gone, and just then, the phone rings. It's Sam, and he sounds scared. He was hoping to warn Paulie, he says, but it looks like he called too late. Salieri's found out about the robbery and has marked both Paulie and Tommy for death. Sam offers to help Tommy escape and tells Tommy to meet him at the city gallery. When Tommy arrives, however, the whole thing turns out to be a massive double cross. Sam, the money, and some armed hitmen are waiting. Not only has Sam sold Tommy out, but he ratted out Paulie as well. And it wasn't just because of the bank job either. It turns out that Sam and the Don are well aware of Tommy's failure to kill Michelle and Frank, and after the robbery, they've decided that Tommy's nothing but a liability. As Sam's new friends move in to execute Tommy, he takes cover, and a shootout ensues, one that ends with everyone dead except Tommy and Sam. As the two trade shots, Tommy asks Sam how he found out about the people he's allowed to live. Sam replies that Michelle was stupid enough to come back to Lost Heaven. Remember what we said about Mercy biting mobsters in the ass? And as soon as the mob discovered her, Sam was dispatched to finish the job. And once Salieri realized that Tommy was an unreliable killer, it didn't take long for him to find Frank, either. During the shootout, Sam's gun jams at a critical moment, but, once again, Tommy can't bring himself to pull the trigger on a friend. Laughing at Tommy's weakness, Sam staggers away, but as he's escaping, Tommy has a change of heart and shoots him in the back. As Sam lies dying, he tells Tommy that Salieri's men found and executed Frank, and that one way or another, Tommy will suffer the same fate. Tommy then fills Sam full of lead and flees. Following Sam's death, Tommy takes Sarah and their daughter and flees to Europe, but he realizes that if Salieri could find Frank, he'll find them too. Tommy then decides to return stateside and testify against Salieri, at which point he meets up with Detective Norman and begins the conversation that the entire game has been part of. Thanks to Tommy's testimony, Salieri is sent to prison for life. Some of his men are handed death sentences, and the gang is completely dismantled. Tommy, Sarah, and their daughter are taken into the witness protection program and relocated to the West Coast, where Tommy gets a job working for a respectable company. Years later, in 1957, a much older Tommy is watering plants in his suburban front yard. A car pulls up and two men step out, addressing him as Mr. Angelo. When Tommy responds, their words, "Mr. Salieri sends his regards," are immediately followed by a point-blank blast from a sawed-off shotgun. As Tommy lies dying, we hear his final thoughts, in which he once again muses that the simple ambition for a better life was his undoing, and the undoing of all his friends. The end. Empire Bay, 1943. Vittorio Vito Scaletta, a young man with dreams, debts, and a knack for trouble. A botched jewelry heist lands him a choice, prison or war. He chooses the battlefield, and it changes his life forever. But how did Vito's story begin? From his humble Sicilian roots to the gritty streets of Empire Bay, this is a tale of survival, betrayal, and the rise of a man entangled in the web of the Mafia. Stay tuned as we unravel Vito Scaletta's epic journey from a street kid to a soldier and beyond. On a rainy September night in 1951, Vito Scaletta sits alone in a crumbling apartment. A cigarette burns between his fingers as he flips through a photo album, memories flooding back. Born in 1925 in San Martino, Sicily, life was never easy for Vito. His family, Antonio Maria and his sister Francesca, scraped by, dreaming of something better. In 1932, Antonio made a bold choice. He moved the family across the ocean to America, chasing a brighter future. 7-year-old Vito was in awe of the bustling city of Empire Bay, but that wonder quickly faded when their new reality set in. A roach-infested apartment in the rough immigrant neighborhood of Sand Island. The American dream felt more like a cruel joke. Antonio found grueling work at the docks, but most of his wages disappeared into bottles of booze. Life didn't get easier for Vito, though he found a silver lining at school: Joe Barbaro. The two became inseparable, bonded by their shared poverty and knack for trouble. Petty crimes became their way of survival. In 1943, their luck ran out during a jewelry heist. Joe escaped, but Vito wasn't so lucky. Facing jail time, he was offered a choice: prison or the army. With America at war and needing Italian speakers for the invasion of Sicily, Vito chose the battlefield. Little did he know, the war would change him forever, and his return home would pull him deeper into a world he could never escape. The chaos of war was all around as Vito Scaletta parachuted into Sicily during Operation Husky. Assigned to the 504th Parachute Infantry, his mission took an immediate turn when flak struck their plane, forcing them to bail out behind enemy lines. Stranded but not alone, Vito, alongside a corporal and Private Williams, joined forces with the local resistance. Their first test came swiftly. Mussolini's soldiers descended on the small town of San Celeste, rounding up its people for execution. Vito and his squad struck back, liberating the town and storming the town hall to free the prisoners. Victory was short-lived. As reinforcements arrived, a shell from a German Vespe slammed into their position, leaving Vito unconscious. As Italian soldiers moved to finish the job, salvation came from an unexpected source. Don Calo, the powerful head of the Sicilian Mafia, arrived in a Sherman tank, flanked by his men. With calm authority, he convinced the enemy troops to surrender, offering them the chance to return to their families. The sight of the Don effortlessly wielding such influence left a lasting impression on Vito. It was his first encounter with the Mafia's true power. In that moment, amidst war's devastation, Vito witnessed how power and respect could turn the tide, planting seeds of ambition that would shape his future. After 2 grueling years away, Vito Scaletta steps off a train in Empire Bay, home on a month-long leave after being injured in battle. The familiar face of his best friend, Joe Barbaro, greets him with a warm welcome. They reminisce on the drive to Freddy's bar, Vito recounting his time in Sicily, a medal from General Patton, and the surreal influence of Don Calo. Over drinks, Joe reveals a plan to keep Vito home for good, arranging forged discharge papers through a trusted contact, Giuseppe. Later that evening, Vito returns to his family's modest apartment in Little Italy. His mother and sister, Frankie, greet him with tearful hugs and a warm meal. The next morning, the harsh realities of life come crashing in. Francesca reveals that their father left the family in debt to a ruthless loan shark. Determined to help, Vito promises to take care of it. Joe introduces Vito to a life of crime. Giuseppe teaches him to pick locks, and soon, Vito is stealing cars and meeting key figures like Mike Bruschi, who buys stolen vehicles. Despite Vito's unease with the danger, he realizes there's no other way to make quick money and promises himself he'll take control of his future. Vito's return to Empire Bay isn't just a homecoming. It's the beginning of a new chapter, one where survival means walking a dangerous line between loyalty, ambition, and the harsh truths of the American dream. At his mother's urging, Vito Scaletta visits Derek Papalardo at the Southport docks to seek honest work. After a brief attempt at manual labor stacking crates, Vito realizes it isn't for him. When Derek learns of Vito's connection to Joe Barbaro, he tests his loyalty by having him collect a barber's fee from dock workers. The shakedown earns Vito an easy $100 and solidifies Derek's trust. Later at Freddy's bar, Joe introduces Vito to Henry Tomasino, a seasoned wise guy with a lucrative offer. The job: steal valuable gas stamps from the Office of Price Administration. Henry emphasizes the need for stealth. Any violence would cost Vito a significant cut. With the help of Maria Agnello, who provides details in exchange for a ride, Vito successfully pulls off the heist. However, there's a catch. The stamps expire the next day. Forced to hustle, Vito spends the night racing across Empire Bay, selling the stamps to gas stations before the deadline. Vito wakes up to a note from Joe, instructing him to meet at Freddy's bar, armed and ready for a big job. Over drinks, Henry Tomasino explains the plan. A jewelry store owner owes money to Alberto Clemente and isn't paying fast enough. Vito and Joe are tasked with robbing the store after dark, disguised as phone company workers. That night, the duo successfully breaks into the store and begins gathering the jewels. Their plans unravel when Brian O'Neill and his gang crash through the storefront in a van, attempting to rob the store themselves. Chaos erupts as the two groups exchange fire, only for the police to arrive, forcing everyone to flee. Caught in the crossfire, Vito and Joe escape to the roof and cross to a neighboring building, narrowly avoiding capture. From their vantage point, they watch as O'Neill and his crew are arrested, leaving the jewels and trouble behind. At Freddy's bar, Vito meets Luca Guarino, who praises his previous work and offers a chance to advance in the Clemente crime family. The catch? Vito and Joe must pay a $5,000 initiation fee and prove their loyalty by eliminating Sidney Penn, a former associate who defied the family. Henry Tomasino lays out the plan: ambush Penn at his distillery using an MG-42. Vito picks up the weapon from Harry Marsden, a fellow World War II veteran, sharing war stories before heading to Sand Island. The ambush begins, but while Penn's men are gunned down, Penn escapes into the distillery. Vito, Joe, and Henry pursue him, fighting through the building until they corner Penn. Despite his pleas, they finish him off, but not before Henry is gravely wounded. As the distillery burns and police close in, Vito drives Henry to a mob doctor, El Greco, for emergency care. Grateful for Vito's help, Henry pays him $2,000. With his share, Vito finally clears his family's debt, reassuring his sister Francesca that everything is under control. Arrest and imprisonment. Leaving Joe's apartment, Vito Scaletta is arrested for distributing illegal gas stamps after being betrayed by a gas station attendant. Despite Clemente funding a lawyer, it's clear the lawyer's priority is ensuring Vito doesn't implicate the family. Convicted, Vito is sentenced to 10 years at Hartman Federal Penitentiary, life in prison. Arriving at Hartman on May 18th, 1945, Vito is introduced to the brutal regime under Captain Terrence Stone. The reality of prison life hits hard, with inmates jeering and guards asserting dominance. After a scuffle with rival Brian O'Neill, Vito gains the attention of Leo Galante, a powerful inmate connected to the Mafia. Leo offers Vito protection in exchange for becoming a sparring partner and enforcer. Vito adapts to the harsh prison life through Leo's guidance. He trains as a fighter, learns mafia operations, and proves his strength by settling scores with the Irish inmates, culminating in a bloody confrontation with O'Neill. Despite the hardship, including the death of his mother, Vito survives by growing stronger and forging alliances. Released from prison early thanks to Leo Galante, Vito Scaletta returns to a city transformed. He feels out of place in a world that moved on without him. Vito's first stop is Joe Barbaro's, where Joe welcomes him warmly and gives him the keys to a new apartment in Uptown. After settling in, Vito reconnects with Joe, who introduces him to Eddie Scarpa, an underboss for the powerful Falcone crime family. Eddie, Joe, and Vito head to the Garden of Eden for drinks and women. During the outing, Eddie asks Vito why he chose a life of crime. Vito explains that he wanted more than his father's miserable life. Impressed by Vito's ambition, Eddie invites him to work for the Falcone family, which Vito eagerly accepts, the gruesome task. The night takes a dark turn when Eddie drunkenly reveals a secret. There's a body in the trunk of the car. The corpse belongs to Frankie Potts, who Eddie was supposed to bury, but postponed in favor of drinking. At Eddie's insistence, Vito drives them to the old observatory. With Eddie and Joe too drunk to handle the gruesome task, Vito reluctantly buries the body alone. After finishing the job, Vito drives the others back to Joe's apartment. Eddie promises to make it up to him, and Joe apologizes for the chaotic homecoming. Exhausted, Vito returns to his new apartment, reflecting on his first night back in the underworld. Vito Scaletta wakes to the sound of Joe Barbaro and a young accomplice, Marty, calling him downstairs. Joe has a truck full of stolen cigarettes and a plan to sell them around Empire Bay for easy cash. As Vito takes the wheel, the two discuss the chaotic events of the previous night. Vito, still shaken by burying a body, hopes for a smoother day. A greaser problem. Things take a turn when a gang of greasers, led by Billy Barnes, confront them and demand a cut for operating on their turf. Joe refuses, and chaos erupts as Barnes orders his crew to firebomb the truck. Joe retaliates by shooting Barnes, sending the others fleeing. Vito and Joe give chase, but the greasers manage to escape. Eddie's orders. Frustrated, the pair calls Eddie Scarpa for advice. Eddie instructs them to meet Steve Coyne at the Crazy Horse, a local bar, and make an example of the greasers, but without killing anyone to avoid bad press. The retaliation. Vito, Joe, Marty, and Steve head to the greasers' hangout at the Crazy Horse. When they find it empty, they trash the bar, shoot it up, and set it ablaze. They then move on to the greasers' hideout at an abandoned foundry. The showdown. At the foundry, the greasers are armed and ready, leading to an intense gunfight. Despite Eddie's orders, Vito and the others leave no survivors. Steve steals a hot rod as revenge, while Vito and Joe take two other cars to Derek's vehicle export racket at the docks, settling debts. With the cars sold, they make enough to pay Eddie the $2,000 they owe. Vito takes his share, reflecting on the violence and chaos of the day, and heads home for some much-needed rest. Vito Scaletta gets a call from Eddie Scarpa telling him to come to the Maltese Falcon with a gun and a decent car. When he arrives, he is introduced to Carlo Falcone, who asks Vito how he feels about Alberto Clemente and Luca Guarino. Vito states that the way he sees it, they tried to steal $5,000 from him and left him to rot in jail. Falcone goes on to say that it looks like they're about to make a move on him, so he's going to do something first. As Carlo leaves, Eddie explains that three of their guys, Harvey Beans, Epstein, the Falcone accountant, Frankie the Mick, and Antonio Balsamo all disappeared the night before, and the word around town was that Luca Guarino had something to do with it. He wants Vito to follow Luca, and if he finds out he had anything to do with this, he wants Vito to whack the bastard. Going after Luca. Vito follows Luca, who eventually leads him to the Clemente slaughterhouse, where Vito sees the men being unloaded from a truck. He works his way through the building until he finds where they're torturing the men for information on Falcone's drug operation. Frankie the Mick is already dead, and Luca's men are about to start on the other two when Vito walks in and interrupts them. Surprised to see Vito again, Luca explains that if he knew what was really going on, he would realize he was better off in jail. Vito is suddenly hit from behind by Sammy, and the two fight it out for a while. Just as Sammy is about to hack him apart with a large meat cleaver, Tony Balls kicks a pistol over to Vito, and he shoots Sammy 3 times in the chest, killing him. When Luca sees this, he runs off to lock himself in an office and call backup, telling his men to take care of Vito. Luca's men were no match for Vito and Tony, and once they finished with them, they went after Luca, breaking down the door to his office and dragging him out. As Vito left to report back to Eddie, Tony went to work on Luca, supposedly torturing him with a cattle prod before throwing him in a meat grinder. After getting cleaned up, Vito meets Joe and Eddie back at the Maltese Falcon, where he learns that he and Joe are going to be brought into the Falcone family, becoming made men. Vito's old friend, Leo Galante, even stopped by to witness Vito's ceremony and wish him well. Vito finally felt like he had made it, that from here on out, his life would mean something. To celebrate, he goes out and buys himself a new house in Greenfield. The Falcone family declares war against Alberto Clemente after his brutal kidnapping and torture of their men. Vito Scaletta meets with Carlo Falcone, Eddie Scarpa, and Joe Barbaro to discuss their next move. Clemente is holding a meeting at the Empire Arms Hotel that afternoon, providing the perfect opportunity to eliminate him and his top associates. Joe unveils a small bomb meant to ensure precision, though it only deepens Vito's apprehension about the mission. Reluctant rolls. As they prepare, Vito notices Marty, a young and inexperienced driver, tagging along. Joe insists Marty's driving skills make him perfect for the job, though Vito remains uneasy about involving the eager rookie. During the ride to the hotel, Marty's excitement and relentless questions only add to Vito's concerns, especially when Joe accidentally reveals they're carrying explosives. The setup. Disguised as hotel maintenance staff, Vito and Joe make their way to the conference room on the 18th floor. They plant the bomb beneath the table, with Vito running the wiring out the window while they clean up a bloody accident at the request of Clemente's men. Their plan is interrupted when they encounter armed guards on the roof, forcing them into a firefight before they can connect the bomb. An early explosion. As they descend to complete the wiring, the bomb detonates prematurely, narrowly sparing them but failing to kill Clemente. The mob boss escapes the blast by being in the bathroom and flees, prompting Vito and Joe to pursue him through the building. A tragic loss. When they reach the parking garage, they discover Marty has been killed in the chaos. Heartbroken but determined, Joe and Vito jump into their car to chase Clemente through the city streets. Joe finishes the job by gunning Clemente down, avenging Marty with a torrent of bullets. The aftermath. Back at his apartment, Joe grieves Marty's death, drowning his sorrow in anger and alcohol. Later that night, Vito receives a call from the Lone Star Bar, where Joe has spiraled out of control. When Vito arrives to calm him, Joe's gun accidentally discharges, killing the bartender, Leon. Now furious, Vito takes charge, disposing of Leon's body and the evidence at Brewski's Scrap and Salvage, while ensuring Joe makes it home safely. Exhausted and frustrated, Vito finally returns to his apartment, reflecting on the cost of their actions. Vito Scaletta is surprised to find Henry Tomasino at his door, seeking a drink and a favor. Henry wants Vito to put in a good word for him with the Falcone family. As they drive to meet Eddie Scarpa at the Maltese Falcon, Henry hints at Vito and Joe's involvement in Clemente's demise, and jokingly advises better disguises in the future. At the Falcon, Eddie reveals tensions with the Vinci family and their disdain for Falcone's drug operations. When Vito suggests Henry for the family, Eddie asks if Henry has useful intel. Henry recalls overhearing Luca Guarino conspiring with Leo Galante to turn Vinci against Falcone. Eddie decides that Leo must be eliminated and tasks Henry with the job. Vito, refusing to betray Leo, rushes to warn him instead. Saving Leo, Vito finds Leo at home in his pajamas, confused and unaware of the danger. With urgency, Vito gets Leo out and drives him to the train station. Grateful but resigned, Leo speaks of retiring far away to escape the escalating violence. Back home, Vito encounters his sister Francesca, distressed over her husband, Eric, who drinks, cheats, and hits her. Despite her plea for restraint, Vito confronts Eric at a party. A fight ensues, but Vito spares Eric's life, warning him to change his ways or face worse. While Francesca later reports that Eric apologized, she becomes furious at Vito's threats, severing ties with him, losing everything. That night, the O'Neill gang sets Vito's house ablaze in retaliation for the death of their former leader in prison. Barely escaping with his life, Vito flees to Joe Barbaro's apartment. Joe quickly organizes payback, leading the pair to the gang's hideout at the Hill of Tara. They wipe out the gang, but Mickey Desmond, their new leader, escapes. After a tense chase, Vito and Joe finish the job, starting over. Left with nothing, Vito seeks refuge with Joe, who offers him Marty's old apartment. The dilapidated space leaves Vito despondent, realizing how far he's fallen. Despite Joe's reassurances about rebuilding, Vito can't shake the weight of his losses. Henry Tomasino invites Vito Scaletta to Lincoln Park to discuss a high-stakes business opportunity. Henry reveals that Carlo Falcone had Clemente killed to dominate Empire Bay's drug trade. With Frank Vinci as Carlo's next target, Henry sees an opening for them to make money by entering the heroin trade. A kilo costs $3,500, with a potential profit of $7,500 per kilo if sold directly to suppliers. Henry proposed buying 10 kilos for $35,000, promising a lucrative $75,000 payday. Vito hesitates, wary of the risks, but Henry and Joe persuade him to join the deal. Securing the money, the trio approaches Bruno Levine, a notorious loan shark with ties to the commission, to borrow the $35,000. Bruno deems the loan high risk and demands an additional $20,000 in repayment by Friday, with a penalty of $10,000 per week for late payment. Despite the steep terms, Henry agrees, and the three secure the money. They head to the Sea Gift fishing counters in Chinatown, where Jae-Yun Wong of the Triads supplies the heroin. The deal proceeds without issue until they're confronted by a group of men posing as police officers. Henry sees through their ruse, and a violent gunfight ensues, leaving the imposters dead. As they leave the warehouse, they're ambushed again, resulting in a high-speed chase through Empire Bay. After shaking off their pursuers, they safely transport the heroin to Evergreen Street in Hunters Point. Profitable sales. The trio spends the afternoon selling the heroin across Empire Bay, raking in profits. Buoyed by their success, they decide to cap off the day with a night of celebration, momentarily basking in the promise of wealth. Vito Scaletta and Joe Barbaro receive an urgent call from Henry Tomasino, who reveals that Carlo Falcone has discovered their drug operation and is demanding a $60,000 cut. This demand leaves them far short of the money needed to repay Bruno. Henry arranges to meet them in Lincoln Park to discuss their next steps. When Vito and Joe arrive, they are horrified to find the Empire Bay Triads butchering Henry with meat cleavers. Though they manage to kill his attackers in a furious gunfight, Henry succumbs to his gruesome injuries. Adding to the chaos, the money Henry was carrying is missing, and they spot Jae-Yun Wong fleeing the scene. A vengeful assault. Vito and Joe follow Wong to the Red Dragon restaurant in Chinatown, seeking answers and vengeance. Storming the establishment, they gun down everyone in their path, fighting through waves of resistance until they corner Wong in his office. Under interrogation, Wong drops a shocking claim. Henry was allegedly a federal informant, working with the Bureau of Narcotics and leaking information about their drug deal. He denies involvement with the fake cops at the warehouse and refuses to disclose the money's whereabouts, saying it would mean his death regardless. Joe, consumed by rage, shoots Wong before Vito can get more answers, leaving them in an even worse predicament, fleeing the scene. With Wong dead, Vito and Joe escape the now police-infested Chinatown. Returning to Joe's apartment, they reflect grimly on their dire circumstances. Henry is dead, Bruno's money is gone, and their violent rampage may spark a war between the Falcone family and the Tongs. Though they agree to prioritize finding the money, Joe, needing a drink, ends the night, leaving Vito to contemplate their worsening odds. Vito Scaletta and Joe Barbaro, desperate for cash to repay Bruno Levine, take a hit contract arranged by Eddie Scarpa. The target, Tommy Angelo, a former mobster turned federal informant. Driving to Greenfield, they deliver the chilling message. Mr. Salieri sends his regards before Joe kills Tommy with a shotgun. As anticipated, Tommy was under federal protection, sparking a chaotic escape as police and federal agents pursue them. Splitting up to raise more money, Vito goes to the dock seeking work from Derek Pappalardo. There, he learns Frank Vinci has commandeered Derek's men for a meeting with other mob bosses. Derek, left short-handed, asks Vito to break up a dock workers' strike. During the confrontation, an old dock worker recognizes Vito as Antonio Scaletta's son and accuses Derek of killing his father. Tension escalates until Derek's right-hand man, Steve Coyne, confesses to drowning Antonio on Derek's orders. Enraged, Vito kills Derek, Steve, and their guards. In Derek's office, Vito finds a stash of cash, which he takes, while the dock workers vow to keep his name out of the incident. Trouble brewing. Returning to the search for Joe, Vito visits Eddie, who questions him about Henry Tomasino's drug deal and massacre in Chinatown. Eddie explains that Carlo Falcone allowed Henry to pay a fine for dealing drugs, but that the Tongs double-crossed and killed him. The resulting violence has the triads threatening Frank Vinci, setting the stage for a full-scale mob war. Vito denies any involvement, keeping Eddie in the dark. Vito learns from Giuseppe that Vinci's men have taken Joe to meet Frank Vinci. Tracking them to the Mona Lisa bar, Vito is ambushed, knocked unconscious, and brought to the Midtown construction site. There, Vinci interrogates a beaten Joe and Vito, demanding answers about the triad conflict. The two refuse to talk, seizing an opportunity to escape. In a daring fight, they overpower Vinci's men and flee the site, settling debts. With Joe injured, Vito takes him to El Greco for medical help. Leaving Joe in his care, Vito heads to Bruno Levine's office to repay the loan. Bruno expresses surprise that Vito managed to gather the money, given Henry's death and the chaos that followed. Before Vito leaves, Bruno reveals he was the one who lent money to Vito's father, eventually forcing his mother and sister to pay it back, a bitter reminder of the Scaletta family's struggles. In the stillness of his apartment, Vito Scaletta sifts through old photo albums, haunted by the weight of his choices. Dreams of wealth, respect, and freedom had long since turned to nightmares of betrayal, bloodshed, and fear. The recent chaos, the betrayal, the murders, the looming threats from Falcone, Vinci, and the Chinese left Vito with a grim certainty. The endgame was near. Leo's grim ultimatum. The next morning, Vito is summoned to meet Carlo Falcone. Before he can leave, Leo Galante and Mr. Chu confront him. Leo, furious over the bloodbath involving the triads and Vinci's men, declares that Vito's actions have put everyone, including himself, in peril. Leo reveals that Henry Tomasino had indeed been a federal informant. His betrayal brought the feds onto Carlo, but Vito's involvement and past loyalties had worsened the fallout. Leo offers Vito one chance to redeem himself, kill Carlo Falcone that day, or face execution himself. A final betrayal. At the Zavesky Observatory, Vito faces Carlo's men, fighting his way to Falcone. Inside, Carlo tries to manipulate Vito, arguing that the mob's loyalty is a myth, and hinting that Vito's own partner, Joe Barbaro, has betrayed him. Joe enters, pointing a gun at Vito. Carlo smugly orders Joe to kill him, citing Vito's role in Henry's treachery. For a tense moment, it seems Carlo's words are true, but Joe finally sides with Vito, turning on Carlo. Together, they gun down Falcone and his men. Wounded and defeated, Carlo taunts Vito one last time, claiming he was always a pawn. Vito responds with cold finality, shooting Carlo dead, parting ways. As they leave the observatory, Joe explains that Carlo had offered him power and a crew in exchange for Vito's life, but loyalty won out. When Vito asks why, Joe quips that Vito still owes him $5. Outside, Leo and Vinci's men await them. Joe is taken aback, but Vito reassures him everything will be fine. Leo confirms Carlo is dead and celebrates the end of Falcone's reign. As Leo and Vito drive off, Joe is led to another car, heading in a separate direction. On the ride, Vito realizes the truth. Joe was not part of Leo's deal. Though Leo congratulates Vito for doing what was necessary, the loss of his closest friend leaves Vito staring out at Empire Bay, knowing his life will never be the same.
Family and who you're born with is who you die for.
Boys like Lincoln, ones who've been abandoned, they're always looking for a home.
He served his country with honor and distinction.
When he returned from the war, Lincoln ended back up over at Sammy's. Now Sammy owed the Italian mob a whole lot of money, and he needed Lincoln's help. It's a damn shame what happened. It breaks my heart.
You know something, Lincoln? Possibly the baddest motherfucker I ever laid my eyes on. You shouldn't have said no.
I know what Sal did to you, Lincoln, but nothing you do will bring any of them back. Sal Marcano deserves to die. I won't argue otherwise. Kill him. But let that be the end of it.
That's not enough!
It's enough if you say it's enough.
This isn't about bringing them back, or even exacting some street justice. It's about making that bastard feel what it's like to lose everything. Watch as I take it all away from him.
It was February 27th, 1968, Mardi Gras. The streets of New Bordeaux were alive with music and masks, but Lincoln Clay and Georgie Marcano had no time for celebration. In the shadowy expanse of Bayou Phantom, they finalized their bold plan to rob the Federal Reserve. Driving an armored truck toward their target, Georgie asked Lincoln about Vietnam. Lincoln's response was chilling. He recounted a woman who, during an evacuation, sacrificed her own baby by tossing it into the water, choosing instead to save a pig. Her reasoning? She could always have another baby. As the reserve loomed ahead, Georgie warned Lincoln to leave his gun behind to avoid suspicion. He apologized in advance for the racial slurs the guards might hurl, assurances that did little to ease Lincoln's growing tension. Inside, they posed as members of a burn crew, tasked with disposing of old bills. The job began smoothly. Forged IDs accepted, $238,546 in tow. But tension simmered beneath the surface. In the burn room, things took a violent turn. With guards neutralized and the vault unlocked, they began bagging cash, until an alarm shattered their fragile advantage. The Federal Reserve erupted into chaos, leaving them to fend off guards while waiting for their backup to break through from below. A week earlier, on February 20th, Lincoln returned home from Vietnam. The air was heavy with emotion as his foster brother, Ellis Robinson, greeted him warmly. As they drove through New Bordeaux, Ellis shared plans to expand his drug dealings into heroin, despite their father Sammy's disapproval. Ellis saw opportunity, but Lincoln was hesitant, yearning for a quieter life. At Sammy's bar, the mood was celebratory. Sammy welcomed his adopted son with pride, and Father James, a mentor and fellow veteran, shared wisdom about the struggles soldiers face upon returning home. That night, Lincoln's exhaustion found him sleeping in the basement, amusing Ellis with his unceremonious habits. The next morning, however, brought trouble. Lincoln awoke to Sammy and Ellis embroiled in a heated argument over money. When Ellis stormed out, Sammy admitted they were in conflict with the Haitian mob, but withheld the details. Duty called Lincoln to Father James's soup kitchen, but his plans for a fresh start in California were already in jeopardy. The weight of loyalty and unresolved tensions tethered him to the streets of New Bordeaux, drawing him into a storm he couldn't yet foresee. February 21st, 1968, 6 days before Mardi Gras. At the Warm Hearts neighborhood kitchen, Lincoln Clay served gumbo with a practiced smile, chatting with the locals. But the warmth of the moment was shattered when gunfire erupted. The Haitian mob stormed in, bullets flying. Lincoln's instincts kicked in, and within moments, the kitchen was quiet again, but stained with violence. Returning home, Lincoln demanded answers from Sammy. the truth was grim. For months, the Haitians had been bleeding Delray Hollow dry, targeting their lottery racket. The losses left Sammy's gang behind on payments to Sal Marcano, a dangerous position to be in. Sammy decided it was time to strike back. He tasked Lincoln and Ellis with taking out the Haitians at their camp in the bayou, warning them to keep the violence far from home. Lincoln moved through the camp with the precision of a soldier, eliminating resistance until he reached Baca, the Haitian leader. After a tense confrontation, Lincoln killed him, ending his threat, but the aftermath was far more haunting. A battered woman emerged, screaming at Baca's corpse. She had suffered unspeakably under his control, and despite Lincoln's assurances that it was over, she fled with a grim warning, "It's never over." On the way back, Ellis confided fears about their father. He worried Sammy was losing his grip, leaving them unprepared for the day they'd have to take over. Lincoln dismissed the thought, insisting they had time. But back at the bar, Sammy expressed his own fears. He admitted to watching the news during the war, dreading the day Lincoln's name might appear on the list of the dead. Though Lincoln downplayed it, Sammy's words carried weight. Luck doesn't last forever. To steady the situation with Marcano, Sammy sent Lincoln to meet Sal at the country club. Sal had other plans. Impressed by Lincoln's handling of the Haitians, Sal proposed a change in leadership. He wanted Lincoln to take over Delray Hollow, bypassing both Sammy and Ellis. Shocked, Lincoln declined out of loyalty to Sammy, earning Sal's respect. Still, Sal pressed forward with plans for the Federal Reserve heist, offering Lincoln a way to secure his family's future. As Father James would later reflect, Lincoln didn't yet grasp the cycle he was trapped in. In their world, problems never truly ended, they only shifted. That was how Lincoln found himself working for Marcano. February 27th, 1968, U.S. Federal Reserve. Lincoln and Georgie are holding off guards in the Federal Reserve Vault, waiting for Danny and Ellis to break through the floor from below. But things get messy when Danny uses dynamite to widen the hole. Instead of just a gap, the entire vault collapses into the canal below, trapping Danny's leg under rubble. The day before Mardi Gras, February 26th, 1968. Thomas Burke, Danny's father, planned this heist hoping to win back his neighborhood, Point Verdun, from crime boss Sal Marcano. He invented a special drill for the job. That night, Lincoln and the crew drank beers and finalized their plans, ready for the big day. Years later, Thomas's daughter Nikki would blame him for her brother Danny's tragic death. Mardi Gras chaos, February 27th, 1968. The group escapes the vault through the city's canals, with the police in hot pursuit. Danny, injured and unable to walk, is carried by Lincoln as they blend into the Mardi Gras crowds. After finding a payphone, they call for a getaway car. When police start closing in, Lincoln creates a distraction, leading them on a wild chase before reuniting with his friends. Despite the chaos, the group makes it back to their bar to divide their haul, $2 million each. Sammy, Lincoln's mentor, declares their freedom from anyone's control. The betrayal. Sal Marcano and his son Georgie join the group, pretending to celebrate. Suddenly, Georgie shoots Lincoln in the head, and Sal's men kill Danny, Ellis, and Sammy. Before leaving, they set the bar on fire, leaving Lincoln for dead. Father James finds Lincoln barely alive and saves him. In his final moments of consciousness, Lincoln tells James to call John Donovan, a CIA operative, an old friend. Recovery and resolve. Lincoln spends months recovering as the nation faces major events. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination sparks riots, and Robert Kennedy is killed. Meanwhile, Donovan investigates Sal Marcano's crime empire. When Lincoln regains strength, Father James pleads with him to let go of vengeance. But Lincoln is determined. It's not just revenge, it's about making Sal feel the pain of losing everything. As Lincoln leaves, James warns him this path will destroy him. Lincoln replies, turning the other cheek doesn't work in the real world. The road ahead. Fueled by betrayal, pain, and loss, Lincoln Clay begins a journey to dismantle Sal Marcano's empire, one piece at a time, leaving nothing but destruction in his wake. Lincoln drives to Sammy's bar with John Donovan, discussing Father James. Donovan worries the priest might cause trouble, but Lincoln trusts him. As they talk, Lincoln reflects on Sal Marcano's offer to give him control of the Hollow, which he refused. He blames this decision for the massacre of his family. Lincoln declares his new plan, not just to take the Hollow, but to claim the entire city. Donovan warns Lincoln that most of the city's cops work for Sal, so fighting his men will bring trouble. Arriving at the charred ruins of Sammy's bar, Lincoln is haunted by memories of the betrayal. In the basement, he recalls Sammy giving him a pocket watch before the war. With resolve, Lincoln shaves his head and face, preparing for the fight ahead. Lincoln visits Donovan's tactical center, where Donovan introduces him to advanced surveillance tools stolen from the FBI. He suggests Lincoln work with the Haitian mob, now led by Cassandra, the woman Lincoln once saw as an enemy. After tracking her down, Lincoln proposes an alliance to take down Marcano. Cassandra agrees, but only if she controls the Hollow without interference. Lincoln accepts, gaining her network and manpower. Cassandra reveals that Marcano replaced Sammy with Richie Doucet, a sadistic man who hunts and kills young women. She urges Lincoln to target Doucet's operations, starting with the prostitution and heroin rackets. Lincoln learns from The Voice, a Haitian informant, that Merle Jackson runs a brothel in Sammy's old club, Perla's. Merle forces black women to serve white clients. Lincoln takes down Merle's enforcers and frees the women, eventually killing Merle and handing Perla's over to Cassandra. Donovan briefs Lincoln on Charlie Kincaid, who runs a heroin ring out of a church. Lincoln dismantles the operation, eliminating enforcers and pressuring Charlie. Knowing Charlie has a baby on the way, Lincoln convinces him to flip and work for their cause. Cassandra takes over the heroin racket. With Marcano's Dixie Mafia weakened, Lincoln hunts down Richie Doucet. After killing Doucet, Lincoln displays his body on a Ferris wheel as a warning. When Cassandra questions his brutality, Lincoln defends his actions, saying Doucet deserved it for killing Sammy and Ellis. Cassandra warns Lincoln that vengeance is a dangerous path, but their alliance holds. Donovan introduces Lincoln to other potential allies: Thomas Burke, an Irishman with a grudge against Marcano, and Vito Scaletta, a former mobster betrayed by Marcano. Lincoln prepares to bring them into his growing operation, intent on building an army strong enough to take down Sal Marcano and his empire. Lincoln's war against Marcano has begun. With Cassandra's resources and new allies on the horizon, he's determined to take back New Bordeaux, district by district, and destroy the man who took everything from him. Lincoln finds Vito at Benny's Ristorante, where Sal Marcano's men are beating him. After saving Vito, the two strike a deal to work together against Marcano. Lincoln promises to help Vito regain control of his territory in River Row. Lincoln meets Connie DeMarco, who tells him about Roy Thibodeau's contraband racket. By dismantling it, Lincoln gets Roy's attention and disrupts his supply chain. Jock Blanchard informs Lincoln about Andy Toretto's union extortion scheme, where workers are squeezed for dues or denied permits. Lincoln targets the operation, weakening Marcano's influence. Lincoln teams up with Vito to capture Michael Greco, a Marcano lieutenant hiding in River Row. After a chaotic chase, they capture Greco and bring him back to Vito's hideout. Under interrogation, Greco reveals Sal's plan to legalize gambling in New Bordeaux with a casino project. Sal had feared Vito might leak the plan to the commission. Once Greco spills everything, Vito disposes of him using a chum grinder, regaining control of River Row. Lincoln reminds Vito of their deal and checks in with Alma Diaz, Vito's associate, to assist with supplying contraband rackets. Lincoln calls a meeting with his new underbosses, Cassandra, Vito, and Burke, at the Eaglehurst plantation. The meeting starts with arguments and distrust among the group, but Lincoln shuts them down. He declares that trust doesn't matter. Cooperation is essential to take down Marcano. Lincoln outlines his plan: dismantle Marcano's empire from the bottom up. They'll first eliminate lieutenants and take their territories, then move on to capos, and finally, Marcano himself. Killing Marcano alone won't be enough. The entire foundation must crumble. He also reveals Sal's casino project in North Lake. All of Marcano's money is tied up in the casino, and it's more than just a business, it's an emotional attachment. Lincoln plans to exploit this weakness to bring Marcano down. After the meeting, Lincoln discusses next steps with Donovan. Lincoln praises the photos Donovan provided, but requests more actionable intelligence on Marcano's lieutenants and their operations. Donovan promises to deliver, revealing he's recruited locals eager to share what they know about the Marcano crime family. With his team in place and a clear strategy, Lincoln sets his sights on dismantling Marcano's empire piece by piece. The battle for New Bordeaux has just begun. Lincoln teams up with Gina Kowalski, a skilled car thief who wants to take down Jack Jr. Holland, the man behind the auto theft racket in Tickfaw. Gina reveals that wrecking Holland's operations will stop his payments to Frank Pagani, weakening Marcano's hold on the area. At Port Bourbon, Lincoln meets Pablo Duarte, who shares intel about Frank Pagani's smuggling network. Pagani relies on airdrops and the Holland brothers, shipping and freight yard run by Pops Holland. With River Row under Lincoln's control, Pagani's operations are vulnerable. Donovan intercepts a call between Pagani and Tommy Marcano, learning Pagani plans to return to New Bordeaux. Lincoln plants a tracking device on Pagani's car to follow his movements. After dismantling both Tickfaw harbor rackets, Lincoln tracks Pagani to his garage. Pagani escapes, but Lincoln chases him down. Before his death, Pagani reveals the Federal Reserve heist wasn't just for money, it was to steal counterfeit plates. Sal Marcano needed an expert, Alvarez, to fix his failing operation. Donovan briefs Lincoln about Tony D'Orazio, who manages Marcano's finances from his penthouse at the Royal Hotel. To draw Tony out, Lincoln targets his men and disrupts his rackets, including construction and blackmail. Lenny Davis explains Jimmy Cavar's scheme to blackmail officials and force approval of bogus building projects. Lincoln dismantles Cavar's network, putting pressure on Tony. Harold Cawley, a reporter, provides leads on Frankie Bernard, who handles bribery and corruption. Lincoln disrupts Bernard's operations to weaken D'Orazio's influence. Lincoln infiltrates the Royal Hotel using an elevator code from Donovan, fighting through Tony's guards. In the penthouse, Lincoln confronts Tony and throws him out a window. He finds a ledger detailing Marcano's financial dealings. Depending on how Lincoln entered, he must evade Marcano's reinforcements or police to escape. With D'Orazio dead, Lincoln gains vital intel about Marcano's operations. Maria Bava, a whistleblower at DeNapoli Waste Removal, tells Lincoln about Paul Puppy Simmons, who's extorting garbage companies, dumping waste, and committing murder. Lincoln investigates and disrupts Simmons' operations, exposing his crimes. Lincoln meets Connie DeMarco, who explains Pete Santini's role in running guns and controlling shipments in Barkley Mills. Lincoln disrupts Pete's gun racket, weakening Marcano's supply chain. At Barkley Mills, Lincoln encounters Enzo Conti, an old friend of Sammy Robinson. Enzo shares that Sal's casino project is his way of going legit while abandoning his partners. Enzo reveals Remy Duval, a key player in the casino operation, is hiding in Frisco Fields under Olivia Marcano's watch. When Marcano's men attack, Lincoln helps Enzo plant explosives around the quarry, ensuring Marcano can't use it. The two escape, and Lincoln drops Enzo off at a safe house. Lincoln meets Danny Sweet Little, a boxer pressured by Johnny Two Dicks Peralta to throw a fight. When Danny refused, Peralta broke his brother's arm and kidnapped another boxer, Eddie Kenner, for underground fights. Danny gives Lincoln intel on Peralta's operation, and Lincoln begins dismantling the gambling racket. Grant Perdue confesses that Artie Higgins, a Marcano affiliate, hijacked his trucks under false pretenses and won't stop. Insurance won't cover the losses, leaving Perdue desperate. Lincoln recovers a stolen truckload and begins targeting Artie's operations. Sal Marcano hired Alvarez, a counterfeiter, to use stolen Federal Reserve plates. Panicked by Lincoln's attacks, Alvarez calls his uncle Zaraga for help. But Zaraga, secretly loyal to Marcano, betrays Alvarez. Lincoln races to the lighthouse, eliminates Marcano's men, and rescues Alvarez. He entrusts him to Father James, who promises to hide Alvarez with a Jesuit contact in New Mexico. Lincoln learns Tommy Marcano manages Sal's counterfeiting operations and runs an illegal fight ring. With help from Alcide Bennett, Lincoln enters jungle fights under the guise of a competitor. After defeating 3 opponents, Tommy confronts Lincoln, recognizing him. Lincoln is ambushed, doused in a flammable mixture, and left to burn. However, he escapes, defeats Tommy's men, and captures Tommy. Tommy reflects on wasted opportunities as Lincoln soaks him in gasoline and lights the gym on fire, killing him and sending a clear message to Sal Marcano. Detective Jim McCormick tips Lincoln about Doc Gaston, who runs the drug racket in the French ward. Gaston's network is tight, so Lincoln begins tracking his suppliers, aiming to dismantle the operation from the ground up. Lincoln teams up with Harold Cawley to take down Handsome Harry Robichaux, who manages Lou Marcano's sex racket. Targeting high-rolling clients, Lincoln undermines Harry's power base and builds a case against him. Lincoln learns from Donovan that Judge Cornelius Holden, a corrupt ally of Marcano, is feeling the heat. Holden pressures Lou Marcano to increase his protection. Donovan suggests killing the judge to send a message. Lou sends Holden an armored car, but Lincoln intercepts it, executing a bold attack while the judge is on the move. The assassination shocks the city and signals Lincoln's war is reaching even the most powerful figures in New Bordeaux. After the assassination of Judge Holden, Sal Marcano's casino plans crumble. Desperate to recover, Sal's brother Lou arranges a fundraiser on his prized riverboat, Delphine, to court Senator Walter Jacobs. Lou intends to bribe Jacobs with money and scandal to secure support for legalizing gambling. Lincoln learns of the event and orchestrates an explosive ambush along the riverboat's route. The explosion stops the Delphine, allowing Lincoln to infiltrate the chaos. Lou, paranoid and ruthless, orders his men to contain the intruder while keeping the senator and himself on board, even killing the ship's captain to maintain control. Lincoln battles through Lou's guards and confronts him on the upper deck. Lou, in a panic, grabs Jacobs as a hostage, but an explosion rocks the ship, killing the senator and throwing both Lou and Lincoln into the bayou. Lincoln hunts Lou through the swamp, eventually capturing him. Lou offers bribes, but Lincoln has other plans. He leaves Lou's gutted corpse hanging in Jackson Memorial Park as a gruesome message to Sal. Lincoln partners with Jackie Grimaldi to uncover the operations of the Southern Union, a secretive group financing Marcano's interests. Chester Moreau, a key figure, profits heavily from this racket. Lincoln devises a plan to draw out the organization and begins dismantling their influence in Frisco Fields. Bear Donnelly informs Lincoln about Olivia Marcano's drug empire. Olivia employs top chemists, including Bobby Bastian, to mass-produce PCP, even using taxis for distribution. Lincoln starts targeting Olivia's labs and her elite team, unraveling her network. Remy Duval, a Southern Union leader and Sal's ally, grows furious at Lincoln's campaign. Despite Olivia's warnings to stay out of the fight, Remy rallies his supporters. Lincoln infiltrates a meeting at Cleveland Duval State Park, where he executes Remy by hanging him on a cross and setting him ablaze. With Remy dead, Sal's plans for his casino falter further. The land the casino is being built on passes to Remy's nephew, Stephen DeGarmo, leaving Sal scrambling for solutions. Olivia devises a plan to secure the casino land by negotiating with DeGarmo, planning to kill him after the deal. Lincoln, with Donovan's help, infiltrates Remy's wake disguised as a waiter. He spikes the wine with LSD, creating chaos among the guests and guards. Lincoln confronts Olivia in her private lounge, where she reminisces about her life of wealth and crime. After incapacitating her, Lincoln forces her to reveal DeGarmo's location. He spares Olivia, deeming her unworthy of death, and sets off to rescue DeGarmo. Lincoln finds DeGarmo in a waterfront building under torture by Marcano's men. After taking them out, Lincoln rescues DeGarmo and escapes. Donovan helps DeGarmo flee the city, thwarting Sal's last-ditch effort to save his casino. Lincoln meets Donovan at his motel to discuss the Marcano family's next move. Sal Marcano, now desperate and out of options, plans to make his last stand at the Paradiso Hotel and Casino with his son Georgie and their remaining men. Sal knows the city has turned against him, and his survival depends on taking down Lincoln. Donovan, preparing to vanish without a trace, thanks Lincoln for the partnership and urges him to visit once the mission is done. Lincoln fights through waves of enemies at the casino before confronting Georgie. He expresses the bitterness of betrayal, recalling how he once considered Georgie a friend. Georgie defends his actions as loyalty to his father, but Lincoln, unmoved, avenges his family by fatally stabbing Georgie. Lincoln takes a key from Georgie's body to access the penthouse and reflects on a haunting memory of Sammy during the elevator ride. In the penthouse, Lincoln finds Sal calmly awaiting his fate. Sal pours himself a drink and reflects on the cost of his choices. He admits he never wanted to bury his son, but acknowledges the bloody path that brought him to this moment. He sees Lincoln as a kindred spirit, wired for violence, and resigns himself to death. Depending on Lincoln's choice, Sal either dies by Lincoln's hand or takes his own life. After leaving the casino, Lincoln is approached by Leo Galante, a high-ranking member of the mob's commission. Leo warns Lincoln that the commission wants an end to the chaos. He offers Lincoln a deal. The commission will leave him alone as long as he continues paying Sal's 20% cut. Lincoln agrees, knowing the alternative would bring war. With the Marcano Empire dismantled, Lincoln meets Father James and Donovan. While Donovan is thrilled by their victory, Father James is appalled to hear Lincoln is considering taking over the city himself. He reminds Lincoln of his earlier dreams to start fresh in California and warns that continuing down this path will destroy his soul. Father James delivers an ultimatum: leave New Bordeaux or lose his support forever. As Lincoln stands at the crossroads of his life, the decision is his: to seize power and rule the city, or walk away and start anew. All Lincoln Clay's endings. Lincoln Clay's story concludes with 3 possible endings, each reflecting the choices he made after defeating Sal Marcano. Ruling together. After Sal Marcano's fall, Lincoln took over New Bordeaux with his lieutenants. He didn't stop there, expanding his empire across the south. He rebuilt neighborhoods, reopened landmarks, and donated to charities, but his growing wealth brought excess, drugs, booze, and vice. Lincoln ruled as a king but lost Father James, the one person who truly cared for him. Ruling alone, choosing ambition over loyalty, Lincoln killed his underbosses. As he left, his car exploded, sabotaged by Father James, who couldn't let him become another Sal Marcano. Though Agent McGuire believed Lincoln deserved worse, doubt lingered. Some even wonder if Lincoln still haunts those who betrayed him. Leaving New Bordeaux. After defeating Sal, Lincoln vanished. Agent McGuire tracked him to California, but always arrived too late. Meanwhile, Father James received postcards from Lincoln, who wandered the world, unable to find peace. For Lincoln, escaping New Bordeaux wasn't just about leaving the city, it was about running from himself. Cassandra endings. If Lincoln stays in New Bordeaux, Cassandra's fate remains uncertain, but she likely continues leading the Haitian mob as an underboss. If she takes control of the city after Lincoln leaves, she faces enemies from every corner: the Commission, Colombians, and Cubans, but eliminates them with brutal precision. She even assassinates the governor when martial law is declared. However, her reign leads to the city's downfall, culminating in a devastating hurricane that turns New Bordeaux into a ghost town. Cassandra's fate becomes a legend. Some say she drowned in the flood, while others believe she vanished into the swamps, ruling the remnants of the city's underworld. Thomas Burke endings. Burke's fate if Lincoln stays is largely unknown, though he likely succumbs to his liver cancer shortly after their victory. If he takes control of New Bordeaux, Burke uses his wealth for a black market liver transplant, expanding his empire into drugs. Under his rule, the city becomes Bourbon City. But a war with Cuban gangs ends with Burke going out in a blaze of glory, taking 8 men down before his death. Since then, New Bordeaux remains lawless, with no one able to claim the throne. Vito Scaletta endings. If Lincoln stays, Vito likely continues leading the Italian mob as an underboss. If Vito takes over the city, he fulfills Sal Marcano's dream of completing the Paradiso Casino and transforms New Bordeaux into the Las Vegas of the South. With thriving development, Vito rules from the penthouse of the Paradiso, the undisputed king of the city. John Donovan endings. John Donovan's story ends in chaos. Called to testify about Lincoln's rampage, Donovan uses the moment to expose a conspiracy. Sal Marcano and others, including Senator Blake, plotted President Kennedy's assassination. When the senator denies the claims, Donovan kills him on live television, promising the rest of the conspirators will be next. He leaves the hearing laughing, his fate unknown, his name forever tied to vengeance.